Being Russian feels toxic to me. That's a very strange thing for me to say, because for most of my life, being Russian wasn't something I thought about very much. I was Russian in the same way I had green eyes, or in the same way I had my name. It wasn't good, it wasn't bad, it was simply me. And then at some point, that changed. Something that had always been an ordinary part of my identity suddenly became heavy, complicated, painful, and sometimes toxic. And I think the best way I can explain what happened to me is with a mirror. Imagine standing in front of a mirror. You are looking at your reflection, and you are reasonably comfortable with what you see. You don't think you are perfect. There are probably things you don't particularly like. Maybe you wish this was a little different, or that looked a little better. But overall, you recognize yourself. That's you. And then imagine that someone takes a bucket filled with something sticky, dirty, disgusting, and throws it all over the mirror. You can't see yourself anymore. All you can see is this horrible substance covering the glass. And then people start pointing at it and saying, "That's you. That's what you look like. That's what you are." And at first you are confused, because you remember seeing something else in that mirror. But now, every time you look at it, this is all you can see. And when enough people tell you that this is your reflection, at some point you start believing them. I think that's the closest I can get to describing what happened to my relationship with my Russian identity. Something that had always been completely ordinary suddenly acquired a completely different meaning. Things that used to have innocent associations acquired new ones. Words, symbols, places. Even the simple answer to the question, "Where are you from?" started to feel different. And for a while I became completely lost. Because if the reflection everyone is showing you is horrible, and you know that the reflection is supposed to be yours, what do you do with it? Do you defend it? Do you reject it? Do you pretend nothing has changed? Do you somehow try to cut that part out of yourself? I didn't know. Because I couldn't pretend that nothing had changed. But I also couldn't stop being Russian. I couldn't make Russian stop being my native language. I couldn't erase my childhood, my family, my memories, the books I'd read, the songs I knew by heart, the places that felt like home. So what was I supposed to do with all of that? For a while, I think I did the simplest thing. I stopped looking. I distanced myself from that part of my identity, because looking at it hurt. And slowly, without really noticing it, I started letting this new reflection replace the old one. Being Russian no longer felt neutral. It felt like something I needed to explain, something I needed to apologize for, something I sometimes wanted to hide. And the hardest part was that I didn't know where the line was anymore. Where did the things that caused me pain end and I begin? Then I remembered something. At some point, I started remembering what the mirror looked like before. Not some perfect version of myself, just little things. I remember that I love my language. I really love Russian. I love how incredibly flexible it is. I love the way one word can change its shape and suddenly express something different. A completely different feeling. I love that one Russian name can become 5, 10, or sometimes seemingly 20 different names depending on who's speaking and how they feel about you. I love our literature, our music, our fairy tales. I love memories from my childhood. And suddenly I thought, wait, those things are still there. They didn't disappear. I just stopped being able to see them. And that's when I think I picked up the cloth for the first time and started cleaning the mirror, piece by piece. Maybe I start with the language. I wipe away a little bit of that sticky substance, and there it is, Russian. I look at it again because I genuinely love it. And I think, yes, this is still mine. So I clean another little piece. Maybe I find a song, a book, a fairy tale, a strange cultural habit I never even realized was cultural until I met people from other countries. And again, yes, I recognize this. This is me too. So I keep cleaning. And then something else starts happening. Because when you clean an old mirror, you don't necessarily discover that everything underneath is beautiful. Sometimes you find something and think, was this always here? Why did I never question this? Why did I think this was normal? Something you were once proud of might look very different when you examine it again. Something you were taught as a child might become much more complicated when you look at it as an adult. You might discover things that make you uncomfortable. And I think that's important too. Because cleaning the mirror doesn't mean trying to uncover some beautiful, perfect Russia underneath all the dirt. I'm not interested in doing that. If I find something I don't like, I don't have to say, well, it's Russian, so I have to defend it. I can say, no, I don't want this. Or I need to understand this better, or I don't know what I think about this yet. It's essential that I stay honest about what I see. For me, this eventually stopped being an abstract question about identity. It became something I genuinely struggled to live with. There was a point when I felt that I was reaching my limit. There was so much grief, so much guilt, so much anger, so much helplessness, and nowhere for any of it to go. And at the same time, I felt as if I was gradually losing my sense of who I was. Because when something that has always been part of who you are suddenly becomes associated with so much pain, what do you do with that part of yourself? I needed something to hold on to, something that would remind me I am still there. And strangely enough, this something became this channel. I think I finally understood something. I didn't start this channel primarily for you. I started it for myself. Of course, I want these videos to be helpful. I want to help people learn Russian. I want to tell you things you might find interesting. I want you to understand my language and my culture a little better. But somewhere underneath of all of that, I need these videos myself. Every time I sit down and explain something about the Russian language, I'm reminding myself, this is me too. Every time I tell you about the tradition, this is me too. Every time I show you a place, or tell you stories about my family, or a tiny piece of culture that I'd almost forgotten to notice, I'm cleaning another little part of that mirror. When I see something familiar in it, I think, there I am. At first glance, the things I make videos about probably seem a little disconnected. One week I explain Russian cases, then I tell you why Russians don't wear outdoor shoes inside, then I talk about Russian names, then I show you the flowers growing in my garden in Moscow, then I tell you what it's like to live in the most sanctioned country in the world. And I want to talk about so much more. Russian nature, Russian fairy tales, music, movies, books. But I also want to talk about modern Russia, about things that are uncomfortable, things that are difficult. Because for me, these aren't separate topics. They are pieces of the mirror. So why did I start a YouTube channel about Russian? Why do I teach you my language? Why do I tell you about my culture? Why do I show you my country? Why do I sometimes talk about things which are much harder to talk about? Because I want my reflection back. Not the one I remember. Not the one I wish I could see. Not the one somebody else tells me I should see. I want to see what's actually there. I want my reflection back.